Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your moderator, Maria Tadeo.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us on this session. Is the Western Balkans and the European perspective. And for that, I am joined by the President of Montenegro, Mr. Jakov Milatovic, who will join us now on the stage, the President of Serbia, Mr. Aleksandar Vučić, and also joining us, Mr. Ivan Krastov, who is the Chair of the Center for Liberal Strategies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Ivan.
Well, as we said, the focus point of this panel will be Western Balkans and what credible strategies can we achieve to make enlargement possible. And the question, perhaps, for the two presidents is, when you look at the idea of accession, and there's many targets and goals and years that get put on the table, but realistically, it seems there's a form of limbo. I wonder, how do you break it?
Well, first of all, let me say how great it is to be here at GLOBSEC, this time in Prague, and to speak about the Western Balkans and the EU accession of the Western Balkans. Perhaps, given the fact that we have all followed Great Olympics in Paris, we all thought that the accession process would be sort of a 400 meters race. But it ended up being a marathon with hurdles. Montenegro has opened the accession process back in 2012, started negotiation chapters, and we are still in the process. We are a front runner, but whenever I speak with my European colleagues, I always say that we are tired of front running, and we would like to come to the final stage. And now the goal is to become the 28th member state of the EU as of 2028. That's the goal, and this is an ambitious goal, but I would very much hope to be also a realistic goal. I think that the accession of Montenegro in the EU as of 2028 would be a story much bigger than Montenegro, because it would be this positive signal to everybody else that the accession is alive, that the enlargement process is alive, because if you remember, the last country that entered the EU was Croatia more than 10 years ago in 2013. So now it's the time. Now there is a momentum, there is a new hope, there is a window of opportunity also on behalf of Brussels as well as other European capitals. And I think this momentum needs to be seized.
Well, thank you for that. And President Vučić, from your perspective and your country, Serbia, I wonder what you think the state of play is, and most specifically when it comes to you, are you as optimistic, perhaps, as you may have been in the past when it comes to this process?
Well, I was preparing myself in order to say some good things that we accomplished recently, but as a matter of fact, I'll try to respond to your question in a different way. Am I optimistic? No, I'm not. And everybody always sees some chances in everything. They see a reinvigoration of a process and everything else. I don't believe that, I wish all the best to Montenegro. I don't believe that they are going to be a part of European Union in 2028. I don't believe that we are going to be a part of European Union in 2028, because there are many issues. First of all, here we have an interest of European Union, which are different from time to time to our interests. And I believe that if some of us might become members of EU, it cannot happen before 2030, but that's just my assessment. And that is very soon, that is tomorrow. What might happen in the meantime, nobody knows. We have different assessments on the future of EU, but we all want to be a part of EU, but we are not sure whether and what would be the situation look like in the European Union member states. What is obvious is that Ukraine and Moldova are gaining momentum, which is understandable very much. And at the same time, there is a public exhaustion within European Union about the topic of enlargement, and we'll see what might happen. What is of an utmost importance for us in the meantime is to do many concrete steps, is to get as soon as possible single European payment area, is to get as soon as possible green lanes or green corridors for our trucks, for our industries, when we export something to European Union and vice versa, is to abolish PEM convention in order to get more of investors, is of course to do necessary reform processes regarding our justice and judiciary systems and everything else. And if we do that, it's all about, of course, attracting foreign direct investments and changing the overall political and economic landscape. And I'm always very pragmatic, not a big dreamer, which means that I'm very much interested in an economic progress of Serbia. And we successfully overtook everybody in the Western Balkans, although we were number 4 just 10 years ago. And I see here Tomasz Kuszta, he was witnessing that for last 10, 12 years. And from number 4 in the region, we came number 1 by almost all parameters. And that's of an utmost importance for us. We need our people to live better, and that's it. Whether European Union will be ready for us or whether we'll be always ready for it, we'll see.
What does that final sentence that you say mean? Because you say they have to be ready for us, but are we going to be ready for them?
Yeah, we have to change ourselves in a way to do a lot of reforms, but also European Union will have to accept the fact that we might think differently on some issues, which will never put in jeopardy unity within European Union, but also we have some issues to resolve. And when you speak about UN Charter, when you speak about UN resolutions, and the fact that Russians did that incursion against Ukraine, and then you come to Serbia, then people in Serbia always ask you, okay, what about UN Charter and Resolution 1244? That is related to Serbia and Serbia's territorial integrity. And these are the issues that we see differently. And we know that we cannot be a part of European Union before we resolve it in a way that both of us would be either equally dissatisfied, either equally satisfied.
And before we move on, I just want to understand very well what you said at the beginning. You said, I'm not optimistic about this process. You know that will be disappointing for members in this audience, but also to
what
European...
What would be disappointing?
to hear that...
I didn't come here to lie to anyone. You know, you wanted me to say, yes, we are going to be a part of European Union in 2028, and we are not. And then, okay, it finishes, and we see each other in 4 years, and then I'm going to say what to you? It's not going to happen. I don't lie to my people. I don't want to lie to anybody. You ask me, okay, Ukrainians have to win. Okay, I say yes. Okay, you can say whatever you want. Is it going to happen? Not easy. But if there is no one that can say this publicly, that can say this openly, I'm sorry to say this. I think I have my own brain and I say what I think. And unfortunately, it seems to me that not in a very few cases that I was right, but much more than that.
Well, you made your voice very clear. Let's see from the President of Montenegro,
yeah, let me just...
let's see if, do you agree on that?
Let me just jump in here because of the audience and perhaps clarify a few facts. So there is definitely a new momentum now in Brussels following Russian aggression on Ukraine as of 2022, and this is where the geopolitics also changed. This is where Europe also understood that the enlargement is also about security of the European continent. So definitely there is a new window of opportunity in Brussels. There is naturally, there are differences between the countries in the Western Balkans in terms of the size. Montenegro is by far the smallest. Size matters. So in that regard, it is very easy to be absorbed as a new member state by the EU. Secondly, Montenegro has been using euro for the last 20 years. So that's another big advantage. Thirdly, Montenegro has been a NATO member since 2017. So in terms of the geopolitics, military alliance and everything else, there is already there. Fourthly, Montenegro has been aligning 100% our foreign security policy with the one of the EU for the last 10 years. And those are all advantages. Montenegro is the only country from the region that has opened all the chapters. We have closed 3 so far, and according to the new methodology, which has been suggested by France and adopted by all the candidate countries, you know that you first need to make a sort of a significant progress in terms of the rule of law chapters in order to start closing some other more technical chapters. So at the beginning of this year, Montenegro did pass that step, and sort of within the rule of law chapters, we were marked by the European Commission to have made significant progress or adequate progress in order to start closing the other chapters. So there is a hope that by the end of the year, we will be able to close, a few more chapters. So in that regard, I think that naturally there is a bit of a different status between the countries in the region. And again, let me be very clear and frank here. It is in the national interest of Montenegro that the whole region becomes a part of the EU. That's it. Every success made by Serbia, by Croatia, by Albania, by Bosnia is success of Montenegro. This is how we look at the neighborhood, and this is how I think should sort of we all look at the neighborhood, because ultimately the regional integration is another part of the story for the EU integration. I think that we all forget how the EU idea started with the regional economic integration, and this is also, I believe, where we all think about the EU in the same way in the region, basically fostering regional economic integration as well.
But to go to the point, if I hear what you say, your tone is radically different, and you're saying this will happen in this decade.
Listen, I'm doing this job in order to make Montenegro becoming the member of the EU. Maybe I'm too optimistic. Let's see. We can have this discussion in 2028, 2030, doesn't really matter. I understand the points that Alexander is saying. And you also obviously understand that we are presidents of 2 different countries.
Absolutely.
That are different in these, in a number of things that I have just mentioned.
And that is entirely fair.
Yeah, the issue is that he was mentioning that in order to say that Serbia is different to Montenegro on all these issues, and I agree. We did not align fully with European Union decisions on sanctions against Russia. And as you can see, I'm not hiding it. I'm saying that very openly. And yeah, that's why we have our own politics. He was saying that they were using euro for 20 years. No, we have our own currency, and we are very proud to have our own currency, and we believe that is our advantage, not there. They are part of NATO. We are not part of NATO as well, because we were bound by NATO in 1999, although we have a very good relationship with NATO. With the increasing level of cooperation, and I can say that we count on NATO to protect Serbian population in Kosovo, particularly in North Kosovo. And at the end, we are not the smallest, we are the biggest. Although we are small, we are the biggest in the Western Balkans. And to tell you the truth, I believe that yes, success of every single country or entity in our region is good for us as well. But I believe that I'm more realistic and at least a bit more experienced on these issues. We have the same goal, becoming a part of European Union, but to me it's always of an utmost importance what I can do for the benefit and in favor of my own country. And that's what our job is all about. And thinking about and speaking about new winds, I have seen so many winds so far, and tailwinds and headwinds in Brussels, and it is changeable, and nobody knows what might happen in 6 months or a year because of situation in Ukraine, situation in the Middle East, situation in Europe itself. And I hope that we'll be able to keep peace, tranquility, and stability in the region. Everything else, at the end, it's all about economic activities, and it goes well. We, I think, have a big chance with critical raw material politics that can be a very boosting the booming new area, not only for Serbia but for all of us. And at the same time, I hope that growth agenda and reform agenda can help us a lot. And it's not about getting some money, because 100 or 500 million will not save us, but it will be another good signal. It will create a better image of an entire region, of all of us. That's very important, and we need to deliver on that. And these are an important tasks, and dreaming is good, but at the end, we have to deliver something real to our people. And I hope that he is right, to tell you the truth. I believe that I'm right, but I hope that he is right. And I hope that we'll all become member of EU much earlier than I expected.
And President Vučić, just to go back to earlier, you mentioned Ukraine, you mentioned Russia, and you also said, I'm not hiding and I'm not scared of speaking what is my truth.
Of course. So it's not my truth, it's truth.
Which I guess some would say, do we agree there's one truth, or is your individual truth? I guess that's a philosophical debate that we enter there, but just very specifically, though, to address the issue, some would say the reality is things are not moving as they could be moving in Serbia because you have a relationship with Vladimir Putin that is problematic to many in the EU Council, and at the same time, you are very bluntly trying to play it both ways. How do you respond to this, and do you believe you have a right to play it both ways?
Thank you for asking me this. Number one, what kind of an engagement I have with Vladimir Putin?
What kind of engagement do you have, in your own words?
You have already mentioned that I have it. I'm asking you what kind of an engagement I have with him.
You maintain a bilateral relationship.
I maintain that. I didn't speak to him for 2.5 years, since war started.
What about the sanctions, the tone, the messaging?
Come on. Let us analyze first of all what you said. Then we'll come to that as well. You said that I was maintaining that relationship. I didn't speak to him since war started. Unlike many European leaders. They were speaking to him by telephone, visiting him, and speaking to him worldwide.
You mean Orban, who is a member of the EU?
I don't mean Orban. I mean many leaders, many European leaders. I did not. But, you see, you, from some point, from some reason, wanted to emphasize that I did, but not European leaders. Let me respond to your second question, which was about sanctions and about maneuvering in a way or choosing both sides. There are no both sides. We are on EU path. Yes, we have traditionally very good ties, and we are not hiding it, and I'm not ashamed of that with Russia. It has always been the case between Serbs and Russians. And we are the only country in Europe that did not impose sanctions against Russia. And as you can see, I'm not afraid to say that openly. But on the other hand, we condemned Russian incursion against Ukraine several times in the United Nations General Assembly, OSCE meetings, and we participated at Birkenstock meeting as well. And at the end, speaking about humanitarian aid to Ukraine, because you just show that everything is about social networks, journalists, papers, and propaganda. If we analyze who helped Ukraine with humanitarian aid, with all the other aspects, let's say from the Western Balkans, pick all four countries plus one entity, they all together has given so far to Ukraine 20 times less than small Serbia. And don't ask me, ask Ukrainians. And if it's always all about someone liking or hating Vučić and Orban or that and that guy, not about facts, then we are on the wrong path. And at least you need someone like me. It would be very boring, always saying nice things like at stadium, you know, chanting the same songs. Here at least you have someone who can say something differently. Now, Ivan, sorry that we...
I enjoy it.
Ivan knows everything better than we do. Ask him.
Of course, Ivan, I will ask you next. Just very briefly, you had a meeting with Ursula von der Leyen today. I presume
I had a meeting with
the head of the Commission. Did you meet with her at the GLOBSEC on the sidelines?
Did
Ursula.
The head of the
Ursula.
Commission.
Of course, I had a great...
And she agrees with...
I had a... No, nobody
premise
in Europe agrees with me on this issue.
Okay.
But everybody in Europe understands my position, because I'm a sincere and honest man, lying to no one and saying what is the position of Serbia. I had a great conversation with Ursula. I believe that we fulfilled, that we did this growth and reform agenda better than anyone else. I believe that we, speaking about all the other issues, found a common denominator with Madam President, and I believe that we'll be able to, although I know nothing about these bureaucratic issues, chapters, clusters, and everything else, but I think that we'll be able to open some clusters before the end of the year.
Before the end of the year. And Mr. Krastev, externally, of course, we've already, I think, had a very in-depth conversation for the first 20 minutes. Externally, I wonder, well, first, what are your highlights? And then two, what are your thoughts broadly? Because clearly there's some very vocal thoughts being expressed.
Listen, Kaplan has this nice saying that if you want to understand world events, you begin with looking at the map and you end up with reading Shakespeare. And I do believe that there is something in it, because there's three things that, at least for me, are very important. The logic of the enlargement and the objectives of the enlargement today were not the same as there was 3 years ago. We're talking about the consolidation of the security, political, and economic space in Europe. So from this point of view, we're not simply about getting countries in the EU. We're in the period of remaking of the European Union. It's a different period. How it's going to end up, and by the way, what is common between the optimists and pessimists is that both of them believe that they know how the future is going to look like. In a sense, we are much more open on this. But from this point of view, we're in a different situation. And from this point of view, Western Balkans are critically important for the consolidation of the European space. This is not simply that basically the countries want to get in and so on. And secondly, before the idea was that European Union is here to transform these countries. Also, these countries are there not to allow somebody from outside to transform the European Union. And in my view, this is critically important, and this is different. Secondly, what in my view is also very much different is that the war in Ukraine is felt different in different parts, because one of the things that happened, and you're going to see in many places, people in conferences are going to say, this is the first big war in Europe. You cannot say this in the Western Balkans. There was a war. A lot of people have been dying. And by the way, people are not realizing to what extent what we are seeing as an unraveling of the international order also has its roots in the Balkans. I do believe that it was in the plane in which then Prime Minister of Russia, Mr. Primakov, turned the plane during the beginning of the operation in Kosovo, when the first draft of the Putin speech in Munich in 2007 was written. So from this point of view, basically what is happening in the Western Balkans and in the post-Soviet space was always very much connected. Back then, in the 1990s, the idea was that what is happening in the Balkans does not matter for the other part of Europe. The idea was it was exceptional, the idea of the Balkanization and so on. But I'm going to ask you a question. Imagine two political scientists. One, in 1990s, living in Prague or Warsaw and believing that what he is seeing is the future. And the other staying in Belgrade or Sarajevo and believing that what he is seeing is the future. who of them knows better where we are now? And I do believe from this point of view, integrating also some of the political stories is important. And from this point of view, all the talk about the Western Balkans is not a technical talk anymore. Serbia is in a particular position, to be honest, not simply because of the war. Serbia has a very strong legacy of the Yugoslav kind of a Tito position of hedging. Yugoslavia has benefiting from this. To be honest, this was the position of Mr. Koštunica, whom I remember. It was position of Mr. Tadic. All the countries has here. But now European Union is reconciling its borders. In my view, what is really changed for the last 3 years is the nature of the borders, and for the first time, European Union wants to know where the borders are. Before, the idea was we have a hard budget and soft borders. Now, basically, we have a soft budget, but we need a hard borders. And this is why all this conversation is different, and in my view, this is why people are basically saying why basically you're allowing, for example, Serbia to do this and that. Listen, you cannot on Monday praise Serbia on lithium, and on Tuesday basically to say you should do this and that. And I do believe that also Serbian position is going to be basically changing over the time, because everything that you're doing is going to push you in one direction or the other. The problem with staying on the fence is that fences are even worse than walls. They can collapse on their own. And from this point of view, this is, in my view, the moment in which we are. You cannot integrate the Balkans in the European Union just getting one country, because on this level, they're going to be a black hole. And by the way, our countries are not doing well. My friend Ramzi Lani is here. I'm always basically quoting him on this, because he gave the best political description of what happened recently. He said, in the Balkans, we made a transition from repressive to depressive regimes. And one of the stories, there is an economic development of some of the countries, but we have a major demographic problems. And basically, the countries cannot stay where they are. They're either going to be moved, they're going to be integrated in some way, or then people are going to decide to join Europe individually. By the way, Serbia is a very interesting story, because you have a huge number of Russians and Ukrainians in the country. This is new, by the way. This is, in a certain way, the part of the story with the Western Balkans is that there are not people from the Western Balkans anymore going to Russia. Even Bulgarians don't go to Russia anymore. But suddenly, basically, Russians, Ukrainians, you have a lot of people coming to these countries. This is also a new reality that we're not talking about. I don't know what is exactly the number of people who are coming. By the way, many of these people are totally unfriendly to the Putin's regime.
Speaking about Russians, there are 95%, it's our assessment, 95% of them are anti-Putin oriented, and speaking about Ukrainians, they are 95% pro-Russian oriented, because they were coming from Severodonetsk, from different places from Russian-speaking area, and those guys that were coming from Russia, they were mainly from Moscow and St. Pete and Nizhny Novgorod, from big cities, and politically they are mainly anti-Putin oriented.
Yeah. And in my view, all this is changing the region incredibly. First of all these people who left you basically to Europe, younger people. By the way, this is changing electoral politics incredibly. Because when some of the younger and the most entrepreneurial part of the population is leaving, this is changing the nature of the vote. And if you're basically a young person in the region and you want to change your life, it's much easier to change the country in which you live than to change your government. And I do believe this is a real issue, so all of them. And from this point of view, I very much agree that this is an opening. This opening can last longer or not. It depends, by the way, on all sides, where I do believe everybody also agrees that the European Union wants to enlarge in order to consolidate, but European Union cannot allow low level of cohesion. Before, the idea was that veto is a nuclear option. Some European Union leaders started to use it as a conventional weapon. You cannot allow a union in the current structure in which basically you're going to veto critical politics. And I'm not going to only about Russia. Honestly speaking, talking about Mr. Orban, he has vetoed much more policies connected to China than to Russia. And from this point of view, these are trade-offs that are going to happen, and they're going to be trade-offs on the Serbian side. They're going to be trade-offs on the European side. And I do believe that, of course, the only thing that is that countries should decide at some point, not simply do they want to get the European Union, but what kind of European Union they want to be part of.
No, we want to, Ivan, you know everything better than I do. Ivan is a type of a man that is, and he is a man that is very much respected in my country, and we all listen to him, and we all read whatever he writes.
This was for free, by the way. It was not.
Thank you. Next time, don't worry, we'll pay for it. What I wanted to say, it's always like these doubts. You want to be a Trojan horse within European Union. You want to be that and that. And I'm asked whether we want to be a part of EU. And I say openly, publicly, yes, we want to be a part of EU as soon as possible. And I know how many things we need to do. Whether it will happen or not, I have different views comparing to others, and that's it. But whenever we say, yes, we want to be a part of EU, you always hear those doubts. No, you don't want to be that. You want to be a Russian Trojan horse, or you want to be their puppet, serving themselves instead of serving our common purposes and everything else. And when you hear it every single day, and as you can see, I have no problems discussing it before such a big and important audience as we have it today. But the real issue is that we need to build this trust and confidence as well. That's why I believe that the last visits of Olaf Scholz and Emmanuel Macron, which lasted till yesterday afternoon, were very important to us. We had Bill Burns in Serbia very recently as well, and I hope that we'll be able to reach that kind of common denominator in our all interests that will bring us closer to EU. But you know, when we say something, someone has to believe in that, because we are not even hiding anything. As you know, Ivan, at least we are not hiding anything. And if you want to believe us, if you want to see that, then good. If someone doesn't want to see that, and they have their prejudices or whatever else, then it's very difficult for us to explain our position.
But President, just on that note, you are saying they don't want to see it, they create a narrative, the journalists, the media, and so on. Do you believe really in all of this? There isn't at least something, a part of the criticism, at least a form of misunderstanding then, in communications between yourself and interlocutors that may be valid? I mean, do you recognize there may be parts of your policy that have been misunderstood by a part of their European colleagues?
I believe that people that are really in charge, people that are not only knowledgeable, but that are not superficial, and the real leaders cannot be superficial. They cannot have that kind of approach. I believe that they know everything. But of course, it's, I discussed that with our friend Vlado Bilček. We had some tough discussions in the past, but it was, and it has always been, and it's today all about image creating, image making. And I do agree with you. I'm not a charming person. I don't know how to flatter everybody, you know, how to be a part of a crowded stadium. You know, I used to be a big football fan when I was young, you know, but now I don't miss that. And it's very difficult for me to say, yes, we're going to win tomorrow, if I don't see that. I don't want to lie to myself. I don't want to lie to anyone else. And if my people are asking me, okay, we are going to be a part of European Union in 2028, it can bring some points internally in Serbia, but how can I say that to our people? What I'm going to say to them in 2028? That I was lying to them? Or I was stupid not to see that it was not possible? And the real issue is, yes, we need to speak to each other. We need to discuss the issues. And we need to stop labeling people because they have different ideas. If there is someone who might say, okay, we need peace between Ukraine and Russia, you're going to say, this guy is a traitor. This guy is on Russian side. No, I believe that would be in favor of Ukraine, because they need it much faster than Russians. But nobody wants to say that, because it's easier for everybody to repeat the only one sentence, which is, we're going to win, and we're going to win. And I'm not going to ask how, I'm asking you when. And when I ask you when, then there are never proper responses. But that's just one example, and I believe that we have to do many things internally, a lot of reforms. We have to change our mindsets. I believe that we are on a good path. Economy-wise, we are doing well. The fastest and the biggest growth rate. 1 out of 2 countries with the biggest growth rate in first half of a year, plus 4.4%. And hopefully we'll be able to carry on with the same.
And sir, and also to you, President Milatovic, first of all, if you want to respond and make a case on the thoughts that you've heard, but also we see that inevitably the idea of Ukraine and the war has spilled into this debate of enlargement. And I wonder, do you believe this is going to hinder progress, or actually can it be an accelerator? Because the Ukrainians here, they say it has made everything very clear. It's become black and white for them. It will accelerate things for the better.
I mean, listen, I think that the audience can see, how much Alexander and myself disagree on many of these issues, and that's legitimate, naturally. Going back to what he said about the legacy of the non-alignment movement, I mean, Serbia was only 1 out of the 6 federal states of the former Yugoslavia, and the policy making was made by many people outside of Serbia, by Croats, Slovenians, Montenegrins, probably relatively the highest share in terms of the policy making, given the fact of the size of Montenegro. So there is definitely, a legacy of it in many places across the former Yugoslavia. I think that what is a difference is now a choice. There is a clear choice. Where do you want to go? For Montenegro, that's clear. I don't know whether that's clear for Serbia. And again, it's a legitimate thing, to have sort of a bit of an unclear way where they want to go. I think that Serbia, as the biggest economy in the region, is naturally important. You know that we all speak basically the same language, so this is why the news, the
Serbian language.
it's.
You speak Serbian language.
I do.
Okay.
And that's basically linguistically the language is the same. Many people, call it differently. Somebody, but that's not really an issue.
But that's Serbian
what the issue here is that there is a lot of spillover effects across the region, and what I believe is perhaps problematic is to have this unclear message of where Serbia wants to be. I was an economy minister.
And you don't think that's a narrative?
For about 2 years. 5 years ago.
I'll have a chance to reply to that.
5 years ago, 30% of our tourism revenue came from Russia. 30%. For me as an economy minister and a member of the government, it was a tough thing to adopt the sanctions against Russia and to follow the Council of the EU. It was a tough thing, but we did it. It was a matter of choice. It was a matter of aligning our foreign policy with the one of the EU, because we want to be part of the club. That's it. It's as simple as that. I understand everything that Alexander is saying, but it would be easier for everybody else that we have an optimist as a president of Serbia rather than a pessimist as a president of Serbia. And I say this now as a president of Montenegro. Maybe, for you it would be easier to have a pessimist as a president of Montenegro. Now we have an optimist and a pessimist. Let's see where the things, will go. He is clearly a person with more than 20 years of political experience. I'm recently new in this job. Maybe this is why I'm.
That's fresh perspective.
Maybe this is why I'm an optimist. But even yesterday, when I spoke with you mentioned Mrs. von der Leyen, I had the meeting with her, and I truly believe, and I think that now she also believes that Montenegro can and will become a member state during her mandate. Because, again, it is a story bigger than Montenegro. And I think it would be a massive signal for other countries in the Western Balkans, for the countries of the Eastern neighborhood, and perhaps it would also help pessimists becoming optimists, including Alexander.
Good. There are some things to be added. First of all, it's not that clear and it's not that easy. You forgot to say something. Speaking about unclear messages, that's what I have always been talking about. I had a very clear message even today about EU path. But many people from the region, together with some others, were always insisting on unclear message because it fitted well to your stories. You wouldn't be that good if there is no bad Serbia. And you're speaking about easy choices. And you forgot to say, mentioning 6 republics. Yeah, there were 6 republics. But even speaking about Montenegro and many Western countries, in the meantime, you took a part of that one republic, which is Serbia. And you recognized Kosovo's independence. And it was done not in accordance with the UN Charter, not in accordance with UN Resolution 1244, and that was done against the law. And attack against Serbia was done with no decision of United Nations Security Council. That's a small difference between us, you know, which is not that small. Which means, yes, we are on our EU path, and the biggest problem for Serbia, not to lie to each other, is our relationship with Pristina. Just for you to know. It's not all this stuff on Ukraine, because all these political decision makers, they know everything. They know everything. It's all about this. And this is a very difficult issue for us, and everybody knows it. And my question and my response is, okay, if some people think that we should find an easier way to flatter someone and to say, okay, you're good and good, good. I have no problems with that. We'll see at 2028 who was right. Being pessimist or optimist, I'm right. And you all know that I'm right. You all know here that I'm right. That nothing will happen before 2030. And in 2030, we'll have Ukraine as a first country to join, and then
why
we'll
so
all
fast?
come, then, which is okay, we have no problems with that.
But why so fast? Some would say there was a much bigger limbo for other countries at the same candidacy status. You're willing to say, I don't see this happening for us in 28 or 30, but now you did give a date for Ukraine.
I believe that Ukraine is going to be a part of European Union before 2030.
And why so? Why can you not? Why are you negative and not optimistic about your prospects?
I'm not negative. I'm a realist. I'm a realist. And then
but what is the why then?
After that, I believe that Serbia, Albania, Montenegro, and hopefully if Krastev's Bulgaria will allow North Macedonia to join it, I believe that that might happen as well.
And
but after Ukraine joins Europe. That's what I believe. We'll see whether I was right or not.
So that's your prediction. Can I ask another prediction? Who do you think is going to win the US election? Does it matter to you in any way? Given that you seem to have very strong instincts about names and dates.
No, you have strong instincts about dates and years because you were predicting 2028. I was saying, no, it's not going to happen. I don't know.
No preference?
No preference. Yeah, I have some preferences, but I'm not going to say it publicly.
Can you predict who is going to win Bulgarian elections?
Yes.
Yes, I can. You'll have another elections.
And just as
8 in 4 years.
But just as a final word, President, U.S. election, if you want to go in or not, maybe you don't make predictions. You don't want to do that. But I do have to ask a very serious question. Some do say that if there isn't meaningful progress when it comes to enlargement, this is going to be incredibly negative for your societies, because it will now seem that there is a form of limbo, that no matter how hard you try or how much you want it, things are not moving. So how important is it, and this is a message for your European counterparts, that they understand it's not just a political process, but it is societal too?
I think they understood it, and this is why I mentioned the Russian war in Ukraine, and I think that there is definitely now a momentum to be seized. Definitely, for tango you need two. So there is a clear menu of reforms that the country needs to deliver on. Now there is a new methodology. There is progress that needs to be done within the rule of law. I believe that Montenegro has made that step. Now, as I mentioned, by the end of this year, at the Intergovernmental Conference, hopefully in December, there is a hope that we can complete another few chapters, and then 2025 another few, and then 2026 a few more, so that by one point in 2027 we can do our own homework. Then it's going to be up to the EU member states to ratify the agreement, and ultimately, Alexander is right. It's a political decision of the member states. Mm-hmm. It's a political decision of the member states. I believe again that Montenegro has a number of advantages. It is a clear front runner. Size matters. Institutional advancement obviously matters, and again, the will matters. If there is a will, there is a mean. There is a saying in across the Balkans. So again, with respect to the American elections, Montenegro is a NATO member. It's going to be the choice of the American people. I personally believe that the links between Europe and America are much stronger. Whoever sits in Washington or in Brussels, and that's what I think.
Well, on that note, thank you very much. We have reached the end of the session. Thank you, of course, to the presidents of Montenegro, the president of Serbia, and, of course, Ivan Krafster, the chair of the Center for Liberal Strategies. Thank you very much for joining us here.